Doing well, working from home, like just about everybody else these days, I guess. It's a lovely snowy afternoon here in Ontario. So,
Yeah, we still got snow up here in northwestern Ontario, so we're in the same boat in that respect, and from working from home as well, like the rest of the world is. Thank
I'm pretty sure you and I are not alone in that.
Exactly. Thank you very much for joining us for a few minutes. I wanted to ask you. You've been in this industry a long time, so I want to talk to you and get your insights into what's happening in the industry today as a result of COVID-19. What are you seeing in your business and from your experience?
Well, I think the initial panic over coronavirus or COVID-19, questions of should we or do we work from home have sort of passed by. People have pretty much figured that out now. They're not necessarily doing it well, but they are doing it. What most organizations or many organizations I've spoken to found was that either their BCP or business continuity plan worked exactly as they had hoped and seamlessly, and everyone patted themselves on the back, or it failed miserably. We've talked to organizations that were supposed to have go bags set with laptops in them, and they found the bags and no laptops or no headsets, or the laptops weren't configured. So it really became a real world exercise in business continuity, and I think a number of organizations have had to retool their strategies in that area.
Absolutely. Talking specifically about the contact center space and that, and the BPO space, what have your other clients been telling you, and how has it affected them?
Well, certainly, some of them struggle to get their agents to work from home. The ones with premise-based telephony, and and even some who had configured the possibility of working from home didn't have anywhere near the bandwidth they needed to send everybody home. So they had to make changes, and they had to do it on the fly, and there were delays involved. Of course, government contact centers were pretty heavily hit. Telehealth, crashed for a number of hours, at one point, when I called, the ETA for a callback was 36 hours, and that's how long it took for a nurse to get. The employer contact center in the province of Ontario had an ASA over an hour as well. But it really seemed to break along a number of different lines. E-commerce firms are busy because we're all working from home and not going out and shopping. The delivery services are busy. Government and health-related services are busy. Other types of contact centers, not so much. Consumer affairs contact centers have seen reductions in volume. Folks aren't necessarily worried as much about what the ingredients are, or how to remove a stain in something.
Yeah.
As they might be at other times. So for BPOs, this has been a bit of a boon. We've seen a number of folks struggle to get their BCP program up and running. Phone your friendly neighborhood BPO, to use them as overflow, and at least to buy them some time to get their own systems and people set up and operating remotely. And then a number of the organizations that have been, hit hard by volume increases due to the virus have brought in BPOs to support them by taking some of the lower complexity calls. That includes, companies in the e-commerce space. That includes government agencies. So this has really been a good opportunity for BPOs to, if you will, make some hay with the sunshines. Now, some of them have the same challenges, bricks and mortar centers, versus virtual, although there are some folks that are, 100% or nearly 100% virtual who have really enjoyed this little run, I suspect.
Interesting. And what about those organizations who are making that radical, that immediate shift from, like the traditional centralized contact center to going for a work from home model? What sort of technologies do you see them using out there, apart from just a PC and an internet line? What other things are they tending to look at to help make the operation work smoothly?
Well, first of all, they've been, if they're premise-based, then the question is how do we route the call there? If they have a follow me or a call forwarding capability, they could send those calls to a landline or even to a cell phone line. And I know firms that have actually done both, where the agents are working from home but getting the calls over their cell or a landline. If they have cloud-based telephony, then they're able simply to answer the calls that way. They've struggled in terms of making sure that they have all their tools web-enabled. One of the big challenges, of course, is that it's one thing to take the phone call, but if your CRM isn't web-enabled, or if you have to go in through a tunnel and you have bandwidth issues, it's not going to be fun or fast interaction. And lots of organizations have had to learn new ways about how to manage. If you've only had bricks and mortar center, then the management of line staff is totally foreign in a remote environment. You can't sort of sit there and work, actually hear your team and notice a difference in the pitch or tone in the center and know that there's something up. You can't just look up and see somebody raising their hand for assistance. You have to actually be able to maintain a sidebar conversation at all times with your remote agents through Skype or through Teams or through Slack or through some other similar product that's going to allow you to see them, to see when they're in trouble, to be able to have chat discussions with them, to be able to pull them off the phones and have a one-on-one discussion. Organizations have had to figure out what they're going to do about quality. In terms of quality management, they've had to look at how they do training or reporting. Team leads, supervisors have started to have to pay more attention to reports because they don't get as many other clues that some of their team may be struggling. So they start looking at things like availability, and they look at the aux codes, and they look at the time between calls, and then they try and set out to have a chat or two with everybody at least once a day. Just to see how folks who are just as unfamiliar with the environment as a supervisor or team lead might be, to see how they're faring. Because working remotely can be awfully lonely. It can be
Absolutely, yeah.
isolating if you're used to being in a room full of people.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those companies who are struggling with keeping their agents motivated and they're doing those regular check-ins, what other ideas do you have for things that they can do to help manage that transition from centralized to work from home, and especially with motivation and morale?
Yeah, having the ability to sort of have everyone get together as a group helps. You certainly want the one-on-ones, but if you're dealing with a whole group of people, seeing each other in the office and chatting with each other throughout the day, and you take that away, it can feel very demotivating to each of the folks. So having kickoff calls where everyone gets on board before they start their shift, having the ability to have lunch learns, where the company pays for whatever the lunch is, having virtual happy hours and pitch sessions at the end of the shift, all of these helpful ways to keep the team engaged and focused, and allow them to highlight any areas that they're specifically struggling with or having problems.
Interesting. There's some good ideas in there. And you've been in this industry a long time. You're one of the folks that I would look up to as an industry veteran. Years of experience in that. Have you ever seen anything like this? What we're experiencing right now?
Gosh, I think that's the second time you've called me old on this call. But
Hey.
no, you're right. I have been in the business a long time. I know, we've seen localized events. We've seen flooding. We've seen hurricanes. We've seen ice storms that may take down an area of the country or of the continent for days, weeks, or even months. But organizations were able to direct traffic elsewhere. There was always an unaffected area where they could reach out to gain support and assistance. Here you've got a worldwide pandemic, and so there's nobody that's not affected. It's just a question of how affected all are. So you've never seen this kind of cross the board situation. And I think it's really important. And one of the things that I know a lot of organizations are trying to puzzle through right now is what is the post-COVID-19 world going to look like? I don't think anyone thinks we're just going to magically, a vaccine in the water, everyone's healthy, and somehow the next day everything is back to normal. I think that that the world is going to be fundamentally changed, and I think that that we're all going to have to get used to a new normal, which is going to be quite different than what we've been dealing with.
Do you think that many of these organisations who have been forced to go to a work from home model will want to end up staying with a work from home model, or do you think that when we're all past this, that we're going to see either a hybrid, part work from home, part centralised, or some of those companies are really struggling and they want to go back to the centralised operation? What's your take on this?
I think you'll see all of those things occur. I think you'll see a lot more adoption of the hybrid model because folks already have an investment, in the bricks and mortar. But you're going to see that hub and spoke structure where they'll bring folks in, train them in the contact center, let them achieve a level of proficiency and competency, and then move them out into a home-based role. And that still allows them to bring folks back in and cycle the contact center on some regularly scheduled basis, monthly, for example, which would allow them to maintain cultural context, which is important as well. I think that you'll see some organizations that will accelerate their move toward remote, be it hub and fully distributed. But we've got to remember there's a lot of additional investment required to go to fully distributed. You need to figure out how you're going to do your recruiting, and hiring and onboarding training all remotely. You're going to have to figure out how you maintain culture and do cultural indoctrination remotely. How's quality going to be delivered remotely, et cetera. Hub and spoke and a hybrid really is a far easier path for folks, and I think you'll see a lot of folks go. I wouldn't be surprised if you see some folks just snap back and go completely internally as they realize they have to completely rejig their technology in order to support what they want to be able to do, because this has just been a struggle day in and day out to try and work remotely through call forwarding or other less elegant means than may be available.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about, through all of this, there's a lot of negativity in the industry, or not just in general terms about, the pandemic and people losing jobs. You've mentioned earlier on about some of the businesses that are doing well, like, the e-commerce and some of the telehealth and things like that. What other good news stories are you hearing out there as a result of what's happened with, especially in the contact center industry? What other good stories have you heard out there?
Well, I think that there's lots of good news stories out there. Folks are sending food to folks working from home. I know that in one BPO, their health team has been working like 18-hour shifts, and they've been sending food. They've been sending positive messages, thoughts and prayers, and all those good things. Or organizing things like daycare, et cetera. So I think there are some good news stories out there. I think that in situations like this, human nature really comes to the fore. And I think we are much more considerate and nicer people than we may give ourselves credit for at some points in time.
Yeah. Absolutely. And what about for companies who are still struggling? They're now being told they've got to send staff home because we've got to keep that social distancing, or that space distancing. What sort of advice would you give to, say, a contact center manager who's struggling, saying, where do I start for setting up a home, work from home type model?
Well, I think that there's lots of decent guidance and advice available on the internet. There's lots certainly available through Contact Center World. We're happy to chat with anybody for an hour and give them the dubious benefit of our knowledge and experience. But I would suggest that they not just rely on one source of data. all too often, if you reach out for a technology solution, that's all you're going to get. And remote working is much more than just the underlying and enabling technologies. It really is wrapped up in the people and process and the methodology or the way you manage in that new environment. So there's lots of resources out there, and I would encourage anyone who's still struggling to reach out and engage some of us. I think you'll find that everyone will really try and help and give you good counsel and sage advice.
Excellent. Well, thank you ever so much for your comments. So lots of wise words there, with your wealth of experience. So thank you very much for your time today. It's a pleasure to talk to you. You stay safe and make sure everyone else in your team stays safe, as I know you would do anyway. So we'll be in touch soon, and we'll speak to you then.
Fantastic, Raj. Thank you very, very much, and happy to do this. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Take care of yourself. Bye, Colin.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.